It's time for the Hockey Writers Grind Line, a weekly show covering everything Detroit Red Wings. Brought to you by our own iconic top line of Wings writers. Sit back and enjoy The Grind.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Grind Line here at the Hockey Writers. As always, I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and joined in by my defense partner, Devin Little. Devin, how's it going this week? We got, we've done the draft, done free agency. DeBrincat was acquired. Not a crazy amount of stuff happened this week, though. Unfortunately, no big news, but we'll still talk about some stuff. We got line combinations we're going to talk about, and that's always fun to do. So how's it going?
Yeah, good to be here with you. We're officially in the dog days of summer when it comes to hockey season. You might get one good news story a week, and it's not guaranteed to be about your team. So, yeah, we're going to be looking for things to talk about over the next month or so, but we got plenty to talk about. We've just scratched the surface.
Yeah. And I mean, lots of RFAs re-signing across the league, and Joe Veleno still not. So we'll be waiting. That once that happens, we'll have that to talk about at least.
That'll be the one bit of news for that week.
Yeah. But yeah, it's great though to still talk Red Wings. We're not going to take a week off. We're not taking that. So well, let's get started then. Let's get started with our one good, one bad, as we always like to do on this show. Devin, what's a good and a bad from this past week?
So my good for the week is going to be all the New Jersey numbers that were released by the Red Wings over the last couple of days. Mm-hmm. Some notable ones, obviously, DeBrincat got confirmed at 93, kind of confirmed that himself, but still. Justin Holl takes number 3 from Simon Edvinsson. Edvinsson moves to 77, which is what he wore with the Griffins, and I really like that. I think 77 is a really cool number for a defenseman to have. That's going to be a nice jersey. And then Berggren moves from 52 to 48. 48 is the number that he wore over in Sweden, so kind of figured he'd make that move eventually. So good to see that. It's just nice to see guys kind of falling into the numbers that you know they're going to have long term now. I don't think Edvinsson's moving off of 77. I don't think Berggren's moving off of 48. So yeah, exciting. It's, just etching along here towards hockey season, right? Looking forward to seeing those numbers in action. And then my one bad is honestly just going to kind of echo what was already said. We're officially in no news land when it comes to the off season. So yeah, we're kind of just on pins and needles waiting for that Joe Veleno contract to come in, because then we'll actually have news to talk about. But then one other little bit of bad news I do want to throw out is that the Traverse City Prospect Tournament is only going to have 4 teams this year. It's usually, I mean, there's been years where it's had 8 teams. I think last year it had 6 teams. This year it's only 4. So you're not seeing, as much variety of prospects and teams. But hey, it'll still be a good event, still be a good showcase for the prospects that are there. Just a little bit of a bummer that it's not going to be as attended as it has in years past.
That's unfortunate to hear. And I mean, it's still going to be fun to watch. We're going to still have Red Wings prospects, and that's our biggest thing we'd like. If they weren't in it, I think that would be really disappointing. So they're there, so don't worry about that. But yeah, it is disappointing to be a smaller thing, but at least we have it. I mean, that's happened with the young stars here in BC. There was a year they didn't have it, and that was like, it's like, what the heck? Like, what does this happen? So at least it's there. At least we're going to still have it. Yeah. So my good for this past week is it's the draft is. It's always fun to be talking about prospects even in the off season. That's a good for me, because at least in the off season, you can talk about the different prospects. I just did a prospect spotlight on Red Savage. It was fun to do, and I go through what he's done since he was drafted and just kind of looking to the future, what he's going to do this year in college, and inching closer and closer to that hopeful NHL debut. And talking about signings, hopefully he gets signed. He's still an unsigned guy, but that's not uncommon for college guys. I mean, it may take a bit until just before they're, they end their college career. They go usually, I mean, most of the time the college guys wait until like close to their senior year to kind of make that decision. So I'm not worried. I think Red Savage will eventually sign with the Red Wings. I don't think we're going to be worried about him bolting and signing with someone else. At least I hope not. But he looks like a really good prospect. So that was fun for me. That's a good this past week of writing about him. So if you want to check out that article, a bad, I'll echo that same thing. I mean, I hate this time of year. It's just hockey. There's no hockey. The Hlinka Gretzky tournament's coming up. So there's a good,
there you go.
Not Red Wings prospects, but guys that could potentially be Red Wings prospects down the road. That's going to be fun to have. But this is this lull. Well, there's no hockey at all. We're just waiting for news. Even little bits of news is, I guess, fun to hear about. But even then, it's not huge things that happen. It's just re-signings and trades probably won't. A lot of the bigger trades probably won't happen until training camp now. So we're going to be waiting for that. But that's a bad for me. Okay, well, let's get to some fun talk and talking about more speculation and line combinations. And let's start with the top six. And this is where the fun players are, where we've got some new guys in the mix. Alex Brink being one of them, JT Compher, another one. So Devin, what would your top six be on opening night? If you're looking at it at this point, I mean, can changes happen, of course, but what would be your ideal top six going into opening night?
My ideal is maybe a little different than what I kind of foresee. But let me talk about
Let's
that.
do both. Project and ideal.
So projecting, trying to be semi-realistic here. My top line is going to be Dylan Larkin down the middle. Go figure. Alex DeBrincat riding shotgun, top scorer, top playmaker, and then Klim Kostin riding shotgun on the other side. The way I look at that, obviously, everyone knows DeBrincat's not big. He's shorter than me, and I'm pretty short. And Larkin, he's not afraid of the physical stuff, and DeBrincat isn't either, to his credit. But you want them focused on scoring and creating in the offensive zone and all that good stuff. So it would be nice to have somebody who's there to keep the flies off, kind of deter the nonsense. Be physical, go into the corners, play that role, play the Tyler Bertuzzi role that he played with Larkin and Raymond. But I would say Kostin can be even more of a bully than Bertuzzi was. It kind of goes back to Bob Probert back in those days, riding shotgun for Steve Yzerman. It's just a way, and also Kostin, when he was afforded a higher opportunity in Edmonton last year, he actually looked really good. He was very productive. So he's not just there to beat people up. He could score some dirty goals and do the dirty work. That's kind of what the thought is there. Give it a shot, see if it works. And then my second line would have JT Compher down the middle, maybe Andrew Kopp. I think they're kind of interchangeable depending on how you feel, how they're playing. And then the two wings would be Jonathan Berggren and Lucas Raymond. Raymond and Berggren have some chemistry. Obviously, they're both Swedish, both young. They've been played together, I believe, in preseason. Playmaker, scorer, and then you have Kopp or Comfort to kind of, be defensive, take care of stuff in zone end, do the work in the corners. He's kind of the gritty guy that lets those two have fun and put up points. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking at there. And then one thing I will throw out there is the possibility that Marco Kasper finds his way into the lineup. That's where I get into what's my ideal thing here. My ideal thing is that Marco Kasper makes his way into the lineup. And I would imagine he would play probably on that second line. Maybe he's the centerman instead of Compher or Kopp. Maybe he's on the wing instead of Berggren. I think he could bring some skill, some tenacity, and some hard work there as well. So I think he could be a fit. And for what it's worth, if he was going to be in the lineup, I think it would be in a top six role. I think that's where it would make sense for him to be in Detroit rather than in Grand Rapids. So you want a nice blend of skill, offensive capabilities, and defensive prowess, but you also want to make sure that your skill guys are protected. That's why I have a guy like Kostin in the top six. And that's why I think JT Compher or Andrew Kopp, one of the two, should be in there as well.
I really like that Klim Kostin on the top line. He's a guy that, yeah, he did play very well in Edmonton when he was up in the lineup in that top six with either McDavid or Draisaitl. So I mean, he can do that. He was a first round pick. I mean, right at the end of that first round for St. Louis. So it's not like doesn't have the skill. He has shown it, and he is a bigger body, like you said, has that grit to him. He's quite physical in Edmonton as well. So he definitely would fit in that top six. I don't know if a lot of people think of him as being there, but he does fit. Those two skill guys in Larkin and DeBrincat kind of complements their skill and adds that to himself too. So, I mean, that is a good fit. For me, I really want to see the Raymond, Larkin, DeBrincat top line. Even if it's not at the beginning of the season, hopefully at some point. I mean, I'm sure at some point they will be together. My top line is Raymond, Larkin, and DeBrincat. I do have Klim Kostin in the top six though. So here's my second line.
There you go.
Klim Kostin, JT Compher, and Andrew Kopp playing the wing. Okay. Because I like that. I don't know. I've always liked the two centerman type dynamic on the same line because they can kind of take faceoffs. If one gets kicked out, you got another guy that can do it.
Yep.
I mean, that it does take away. We'll talk about bottom six next, so I won't really give that away. But having those two guys on and say that same defensive ability, and Klim Kostin again adds that big size and that skill that I said, from the top line there. And adds a very gritty, somewhat skilled second line. Maybe a lot of people won't agree that maybe that's a better third line. But, I think that could end up being a really tough, rough and tumble type line that's really hard to play against, that can actually score some goals as well. So that's my second line. And JT Compher, he showed that he could take on a second line role in Colorado. Admittedly had a bit more skill kind of playing with maybe, but he didn't really play. He didn't play a lot. I don't think he played a lot with McKinnon and Rantanen. So he didn't have the biggest skill on his wings. So I think he could end up being pretty good with Kopp and Klim Kostin. So that's my second line. And that would kind of transition to a really skilled third line. So we'll get there. Okay, well, let's do our first off the rush. And here's a question on, we both touched on it with Lucas Raymond being, I have him on the top line. You have him on the second line. Where's his ideal fit, you think? I mean, I know you have him on the second line, but where do you think he would most benefit playing in either the first or second? What do you think?
I think it's kind of a situational thing. I think early going, I like Raymond on the second line because you let Larkin and DeBrincat take on the tough assignments, and then you let Raymond kind of flourish against lesser competition, right? And then maybe once he gets cooking, maybe you then bump him up to the first line. There's definitely a lot of what's the word I'm looking for here? It would be very exciting to see that top line of Raymond, Larkin, and DeBrincat. I think that they would hem teams in their own zone. They'd really get some chances going. And I think that in order to get there, I think that you want to make sure that Raymond has confidence. Yeah. Make sure that if he knows that he can do it on his own, and then he gets put next to Larkin and DeBrincat, like he's going to be really set to reach the totals and the production that we kind of assume he'll get to as a former 4th overall pick.
Yeah. I think he benefits in both areas and being a first or second line role. I mean, definitely in the top 6. We're not bumping him down to the bottom 6. Yeah. But he is a guy that, and now with DeBrincat added to the mix, you're really spreading out the skill by putting Raymond on the second line now. And so, I mean, even though I said first line, but I do see the merits of him being on the second line as well. So we'll see what happens in training camp. I'm sure we'll see both. Happening.
and I'll say this real quick too, is obviously, Raymond was on that top line with Larkin and Bertuzzi, season and a half, basically. The thing with that is that, it's pretty obvious that Raymond was the trigger man, Larkin was the playmaker. Bertuzzi was the gritty guy, right? Power forward type of deal. You put Raymond with Larkin and DeBrincat. Raymond's not the go-to trigger man there. In fact, Raymond's kind of freed up to maybe maybe he's the second shooter, maybe he is the first shooter, maybe you use DeBrincat as like a decoy almost.
Yeah.
They all three of those players can score. Larkin's had multiple 30-goal seasons at this point, and he's capable in his own right. You can Raymond kind of fly under the radar even on the top line because you got to cover Larkin, you got to cover DeBrincat. So
yeah.
It would be a fun line, no doubt about it. I doubt about it.
So we'll see. I'm like I said, I'm sure we'll see it at some point, either in preseason or during the season. When just maybe within a game, maybe within a period. Who knows? We will see. All right. Let's before we get to our bottom six discussion, here's a message from the Hockey Writers.
Interested in writing for the Hockey Writers? If you have experience writing about hockey, are passionate about the sport, and are looking to take your writing to the next level, the Hockey Writers could be the place for you. Here at THW, you will have the opportunity to hone your craft at one of the world's largest and most respected hockey publishers. You will have control over what you write, be able to seek out media credentials, and be supported by a large network of writers and editors. Plus, you'll get paid for doing it. If you're interested and want to know more about team openings and requirements, please visit the Write for THW page on the Hockey Writers website. A link to that page is also listed in the description.
Okay, let's get to our bottom six. And this is going to be different. Obviously, we both had different top sixes, so we're going to have a different bottom six. Devin, see what do you got in your third and fourth lines here?
My third line is going to kind of match what you did with your second line in that I compose it as a tough to play against third line. I've got Michael Rasmussen on the left side. I've got Kopp or Kasper, depending on, whatever, down the middle. And then David Perron on the third line. I think there's some offensive ability there for sure. Perron had a 20-plus goal season. Rasmussen, I was on pace for 40 points if his season wasn't cut short. And Kopp and Kasper have both had successful offensive seasons in their careers. So while I label that as a tough to play against line, they both can definitely, all three of them can put the puck in the net. I see a lot of deep cycling in the offensive zone happening with that line, and that'll wear teams out and lead to goals. And then on the fourth line, this is kind of where I treat it similarly to how Lalonde had treated the fourth line this past season, where it's kind of like it's an offensive line, and it kind of is just like you pick when to use them. You've got Robbie Fabry on the left side, you've got Joe Veleno down the middle, and then you've got Daniel. I have Daniel Sprong because I labeled it as an offensive line, but you can also put in Christian Fischer. Maybe he's the the get into the corners guy that helps Veleno and Fabry do their thing. I think you have options there, whether it's Sprong or Fischer. I think Fabry's getting paid too much to be scratched unless he's really just not playing well. And then Veleno's like the go-to center there, right? I also like that fourth line as a potential to kind of unlock the offensive potential of Joe Veleno. We talked about him just this past week. And I think he needs players to play with if he's going to be able to put up more than 20 points a season. Fabry's been able to put up points when he is healthy, and Daniel Sprong's coming off of a really successful offensive season as well. So definitely both of those guys would give Veleno somebody to play off of, especially if you're kind of picking your spots when to put them in. You're obviously going to put them in offensive situations. So, I like that as kind of a limited usage, but pick your spots fourth line.
That one has actually a lot of potential for offense too. Like you said with Daniel Sprong, he scored 20 goals last season in a similar role, third, fourth line. He didn't play a lot in the top. I don't think he played a lot in the top six. He was more of that guy that kind of went around the lineup. He was kind of being plugged in everywhere. I think I see that same role in Detroit, and he probably won't score 20 goals again, but who knows? I mean, depending on the guys he plays with, he may get close there. He's capable of it. So we'll see. Okay, my bottom six is a little different, obviously, because I have my second line, what it looks like in the first line. I've got Rasmussen down the middle and on the third line and flanked by who would I have here? Okay. Rasmussen down the middle. I'm just thinking who else I still have available here. Rasmussen, I have David Perron on the right side, and then you've got Jonathan Berggren on the left.
Yeah,
so
like
that one could actually be flipped to be a second line too, if you wanted to kind of flip between the two. Rasmussen, I don't think is a second line center, so that's why I don't have him there. But that third line, Rasmussen's a big guy, can win draws. And then you've got the two skilled wingers beside him that I think could end up being a pretty good third line. Perron's pretty good defensively. Berggren, he's still developing that part of his game, but you got Rasmussen there to help him out defensively. So I think that could be a pretty good third line. And then you got the fourth line, Joe Veleno. And this is where it kind of changes for me, because I don't know about Robbie Fabry this season. I'm kind of thinking he's going to get traded at some point, but I really like Elmer Soderblom down on the fourth line with Joe Veleno. So my fourth line is Joe Veleno, Elmer Soderblom, and I'll put Robbie Fabry in there because, like you said, he's a bit too, I don't think healthy scratch is probably not where you want him. At this point, since he's still in the roster, I'll throw him on my fourth line with Veleno and Soderblom. That makes Christian Fischer a healthy scratch and Daniel Sprong a healthy scratch. Yeah, I don't know. Like that. This is where I'm not really sure. And this is going to lead into my off the rush soon here. But flip flopping Fabry or Sprong is my thing. Like you said, sure. with Christian Fischer, that's also makes Fischer out of the lineup as well. It's a little bit of a loaded thing having Soderblom up here, so you have to make a decision on someone to get rid of if that's your fourth line. But I really like Soderblom. He's that big guy. He showed really well at the beginning of last season where he got hurt with Rasmussen, and I really want him in the lineup. I really like his game, so I'm putting him on my fourth line, and we'll have to figure out where everyone else goes. But that is my fourth line. Okay, well, off the rush, and this is where my question is, we've got a pretty loaded, there's Sprong, you've got Fischer, scratch potentially, you got Fabry down there. Who would you take away from that group of players? And is there a rookie, like you've said, Marco Kasper potentially being in your top six? You're also going to have to take someone out if you have Kasper in. So who would your guy be that would potentially out and having to sit on the sidelines?
Well, I do think that I like your thought there about Robbie Fabry. We'll see how things play out with him over the course of the season. And then also, maybe Joe Veleno is kind of on thin ice, right? Maybe he's somebody who gets taken out, especially Kasper. He's a center. He can play down the middle. But I think as I've got it right now, I'd probably take out Sprong or Fischer, whichever one isn't in the lineup. And then those are your two scratches, which is not a bad spot to be in, right? But yeah, definitely keep your eye on Fabry and Veleno. I think they're both kind of in prove it years in terms of their longevity with the Red Wings.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see. And there's the training camp battles, right? And who impresses and who potentially you have to make a decision on. And that's going to be interesting, especially with these guys who brought in like Christian Fischer and, the free agents, and then acquiring DeBrincat. It really kind of loaded everything. And now we have to figure out what's happening. But like Yzerman said about the competition, and that's, it's always good to have those guys pushing everyone else. And that's why he brought these guys in. So we'll see. It's going to be fun to see what happens at training camp coming up. I jumped off the rush because we were talking about it. So I may have another one. We'll see if I figure it. I'll ask another question after our comment corner here. So comment corner, Don returns after a few weeks off. So Don, thanks for the question again. His question is on rookies, and is there a rookie not named Edmondson, Kasper, or Soderblom? I already talked about Soderblom, so there you go. That could surprise and make the big club out of training camp. Like we said, it's going to have to be some pretty big things to happen to go over these guys. But who do you see kind of making that jump?
Yeah, first and foremost, they got to jump over those guys, right?
Yeah.
And Soderblom's huge, so good luck jumping over him. But Edvinson's no slouch either. So I've got two names. And if you know me and the player and the prospects I like, they probably won't surprise you. Carter Mazur is one of them. Especially given what role he fills. He's kind of, I've set it up a million times at this point. Tyler Bertuzzi 2.0. If Klim Kostin doesn't work on that top line like I pitched today, what if Carter Mazur is there? That's kind of I think that'd be kind of fun to try out, right? Bertuzzi and Larkin had chemistry. Would Mazur and Larkin have chemistry? Maybe. And he's also just like, Red Wings want to get tougher to play against. He definitely is the type of player that makes a team hard to play against. So he's one I would look out for. And then the other one, I'll go on the blue line. We didn't talk about the blue line today. Is Albert Johansson. Again, big surprise. I'm going to talk about Albert Johansson, right? The thing about him too is that not only was he reportedly close to a call up before his season was cut short by injury last season, so he's kind of already caught some people's eyes in the front office. But also he is capable of playing on the right side, even though he's left-handed. So that gives Lalonde options in terms of how he could slot him into the lineup. Obviously the Red Wings are already in a position where they are going to be short a right-handed defenseman. But if you have guys like Edvinsson, Gostisbehere, even Sherratt that can play on the right side despite not being on their strong side, that adds versatility, gives them lineup options. So I think if Johansson can not only show that he's capable of being a NHL defender, but also playing on his offside, I think it's going to give the Red Wings a lot to think about on the blue line.
Yeah, we'll talk about the blue line next episode, so stay tuned for that one. And the goaltenders too, because there's a bit of some questions with that too. So that's going to be a fun next one, part 2. My answer to this one is, and I've talked about this before, I got a bit of flack for the comments about rushing this guy, but I really see, and this could be a surprise, is Nate Danielson making the lineup out of training camp. Now, I'm not saying he played the full year. I really see him getting that 9-game tryout because I see him as a guy that could play on the fourth line right off the bat because of his good defensive abilities. It wouldn't be rushing him. It'd be just getting him the taste. And I think he's going to impress people enough in training camp to get him that chance. Although, I mean, we already talked about the loaded forwards here. It may be tough for him to push into that conversation unless there's injuries, that is. But I think it's going to make it really tough because I think he's pretty close to NHL ready, at least in his two-way skill set that he's already has. So I say that he's going to be a really big surprise. He's going to potentially be a surprise coming out there. And yeah, I really like Danielson. So there you go. All right. Off the rush, part 2. And this is going to be a bit on the rookie side as well. And Danielson as well. So there you go. Marco Kasper and Nate Danielson. Now, they play similar styles. One may have a bigger upside than the other. But if they play the same and are neck and neck right at the end, who do you choose to make the lineup?
Who? Ooh, okay. So let me, and this is where we're kind of already going to defeat the purpose of off the rush here, but
long off
let
the
me, yeah. Very, very long drawn out play. Let me elaborate on why this is actually an interesting question. Marco Kasper can play in the AHL. Nate Danielson cannot. If he is going to be demoted, he's going to go back to the WHL. And therefore, because of that, if in this scenario they're neck and neck, I think you might be more inclined to give Danielson the look, because if Kasper can definitely thrive and still grow at the AHL level. Whereas I don't know if Danielson's going to go back to the WHL and just same song and dance, basically, right? Not saying he won't have like things to develop and things he can gain from another year in the WHL, because let's be honest, that's probably most realistically where he's going to end up. But in this scenario, you have an option with Kasper that you don't have with Danielson. So why not, give Danielson the look in the NHL? Because, you don't have to do that with Kasper. He can very much just be the top line center in the AHL and thrive in that role. So in this scenario, I say Danielson, and that's a very unique answer, because I would say Kasper in just in general, but given the CHL agreement, it kind of adds a wrinkle to this that adds some nuance to the conversation. Good question.
That was right off the top of my head. So there you go. I did not write that down. That was off the rush for me as well. Although I did just talk about Nate Danielson, so that kind of sparked it. But I think that's probably the case, because, yeah, you make a good point. Because the thing is, Danielson, if he doesn't make it, he's going back to the dub, and it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing for him to go back there. I say he's close to the NHL, but I don't think he's ready right now. I think he would benefit from playing the 9 games and see where he's at, see the NHL level, see the pace, and then go back to the WHL and kind of adjust his game to whatever he sees and experiences. So Bo Horvat didn't make the NHL right out. He did get sent back, but he did make it the next year. So, I mean, that's where I believe, if I'm not wrong, but whatever, that's not a Red Wings thing. But yeah, Nate Danielson just has a lot of those same things. I think he can be that play on the fourth line. It wouldn't be a liability. So I think they wouldn't hesitate to give him that chance if he looks really good in training camp and kind of is, like I say, neck and neck with Kasper or someone else, another rookie that can be sent to the AHL. So that's going to be an interesting storyline to follow, to see how he does in training camp, for sure.
I do want to say just real quickly, I think in a perfect world, Danielson would be joining Kasper in Grand Rapids this season.
Yeah.
Because you do make a good point about his proximity to the NHL. I think he'd gain more from a season in the AHL this year rather than the dub, but it is what it is, right?
Yeah, that agreement's a whole other discussion why that exists. But because you see the European players at 18 able to go, because that doesn't exist for the Europeans. That's why Reinbacher could be playing in the AHL this season, right? So that's how it goes. All right. Well, that was a fun discussion. Lots of speculation, lots of stuff about the lineups and lines, and we'll talk about the defense pairings next week. Probably a much quicker discussion because there's not as many players, and there's some pretty set pairings, but we do have some new defensemen in there too, and Edmondson, which is always a good talking point as well. So lots of fun coming up. Make sure you're checking out thehockeywriters.com for all our articles on the Red Wings. I'm going to have a few more prospect spotlights coming up. Throw in the comments who you want next, who I want to kind of focus on and looking into going into next season. These are kind of previews for next season. This is what I'm trying to do with these. So throw in the comments, who do you want to see next? And Devin, you've got those top 25 rankings. Are they out yet, or are they coming?
They're coming.
They're coming.
It's in the oven.
There you go. So look out for that as well. That's dropping soon. Keep an eye out on thehockeywriters.com, and we'll have an episode on that, right, as well, right? So debate on what the top 25, and so when we compare it to Delaney's top 15 before. So that's gonna be a fun episode. Look forward to that. Lots of things to look forward to, as we've said. So follow us on Twitter, THW Grindline, and throw those comments. Keep coming. Don, ask another question. We'll answer them. And make sure you're just giving us a follow there. And tune in next week. We'll have another episode of the Grindline. Thanks for joining us.